later than tomorrow, we can send the agenda out so everyone will have it to review it. Dr. Witherspoon, if there are any handouts for the board, I ask that you also upload them, if we can upload them in board docs so that the board will have access to them. And once they're uploaded, we'll have Eva cue the board that they are on the board docs, and you can pull the different presentations that's going to be provided for us.
So when can we expect?
Excuse me?
When can we expect?
When can we expect? You didn't hear what I said?
The agenda and the handout.
Eva is uploading the agenda tomorrow. Okay, and the different presentations, once all of them are uploaded to board docs, she will send a message to us the way she normally does, that we can pull those items to review them so we can prepare ourselves for any questions we may have. Okay? All right. Secondly, I need to, and I've been requested again by my colleagues to respond to an article that came out titled Richland One Employee Credit Card Spending Under Fire and Criminal Fraud Investigation. But truthfully, the topic could have easily been Richland One Internal Auditing Practices Work. You know, for over 10 years, our district has had an internal auditor that conducts internal risk assessments. He's the checker of the checker. So when you hear about our district's long-standing history of clean audits for 33 years, it's because of internal processes that we have put into play, and they are working. The internal auditor works directly for and with the board and the superintendent. His day-to-day responsibilities are to do risk assessments to help improve internal controls. So when you hear that there are no internal controls, that's a false narrative, because there are. These internal controls lessens the likelihood of fraudulent matters occurring. He directly reports to this board and the superintendent, and in those discussions and those reports, he gives recommendations to what we need to do as a district to strengthen and protect the processes and procedures in running this organization. In response to the audit report, which is dated August 2021, this again was a risk assessment of the pcards, which was done to help strengthen protocols, processes, and again, procedures. In his assessment, he addressed opportunities that could be viewed or even taken as issues. Not saying that there was one, but that an individual could see certain transactions and assume them to be wrong. I know plenty of you have seen the audit report, and it clearly identifies what our internal auditor reviews. But at the back of the report is the most important part, in my opinion, because it shows us his recommendations on how we strengthen those processes. And I'm trying to get to that so I can talk about that. And I am doing this at the request of my colleagues so that everyone knows this. Because again, we control our story. Okay. On that report, I think it's page 19, he lists 4 opportunities, and he labeled them as not fraud, Commissioner Devine. He labeled them as opportunities to improve. His first one said, use reminder communications to cardholders, liaisons, and approvers to reinforce restrictions on split transactions, also include in writing procedures and requirements for the liaison and approver to detect split transactions during monthly compilations, review, and approval, and report to the pcard coordinator. Spent a long time today at SAB learning the interworkings of pcard. So I think it's important that when you speak, you know what you're speaking about. Because when you don't know what you're speaking about, you create false narratives. Second recommendation was a log of infractions should be maintained, and appropriate disciplinary action card suspension should be invoked without exception if non-compliance continues. There should be zero tolerance for split transactions. He also listed 2 other recommendations. I believe it was a monthly report being submitted and reviewed. In my discussions, if you recall 2 board meetings ago, the auditor came before this body, and I clearly asked him, have you found any fraud? His response was no. My second question was, have you ever found fraud? And his answer was No, I have not, ma'am. That tells me and that tells my colleagues that the procedures that we have in place are working. Let me go a little further. In that same report, he listed those recommendations, but he also listed that he met with the administration and what? They complied. Today in a discussion, I asked those questions to our CFO, Sharon Matthew Hazel, and she reassured me, do we have these things in place? She didn't just reassure me, she showed me that we are complying to the recommendations of our internal auditor. So I'm going to say to you what the internal auditor said to all of us again. There was no fraud. However, to my point, this district has something that a lot of districts don't have. And that is someone on the inside, Commissioner Devine, that checks the checker for us and makes sure that he is assessing not just the finances, but daily operational things for this board to make sure that we are operating at our highest level, we're professional and proficient, that we yield the outcomes that we want to see in this district, not just in the classroom, but when it comes to being good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars and resources. Now, I am aware, we all are aware, of a matter which is under investigation right now with law enforcement. And this matter coming to light is because the internal process worked. It's not that the internal auditor, because he gave the report in August, but that the processes that this district put in place is working. This is not new for the board because the internal auditor reports to us weekly and sometimes monthly on his risk assessments. That's his role. That's what he does for this board all year long. Assess the district, whether it's canteen funds, whether it's in HR, whether it's with Chronos or whatever. That's his role. The internal auditor is on the inside. He's our eyes, he's our ears on the inside. And that's not to say that anything is going wrong. That is to say that this district takes a complete responsibility in ensuring that we are accountable to our constituents, our taxpayers, etc. I got several calls on Sunday about the article, Commissioner Clyburn. I had folk asking me questions. I don't have an answer for them. I said, do you think it's racially motivated? I don't know. That's not my job. My job is to represent the constituents and be a voice for children and ensure that things run the right way in this district from the top to the bottom. I'm not a micromanager. I'm a member of the Board of Commissioners. We govern the district. So I can't answer those questions. I know a lot of you are listening tonight because I told you I was going to speak to this. I don't know. But what I can say to you is that that report that I have right here is less than a 50-page document. As a matter of fact, it's only 24 pages. And there's another document that's been created off of this document that's almost 60 pages long. A whole lot of writing was added to this report. The auditor's report is nothing new for the Board of Commissioners and the superintendent or anyone you see sitting at this table. This is what he does. So this is not I got you. This is a strengthening of the organization's processes to ensure that fraud doesn't happen. So I'm going to leave it there because, I had some, like I said, I had some calls and they asked me to speak to this. And one of the questions was, Ms. Harris, with the recommendations that the auditor made, are you all complying? And the answer to that is yes, they are. Because I had that discussion today. Because I wanted to report out as the spokesperson for this board that they are complying. Our checks and balances are working. Do we have opportunities to improve? Absolutely. Every organization has opportunities to improve. And if we find something or we are made aware of something that's not right, we deal with it because we're supposed to. So it's nobody not being negligent on their job. It's us doing our job. And if we were to call the internal auditor to this podium right now, he's engaged as we speak, Dr. Witherspoon, in risk assessments for this district to make sure that we stay in compliance and that we do have his favorite word, internal processes and procedures that work. I'll open the floor at this time for any additional comments. I think Commissioner Devine, you had some information you needed to share on tonight. We're going to turn it over to you at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too want to add to the conversation. I think a couple of weeks ago, I think in February or so, we had the same discussion, and I'll just reiterate those same points that I had during that time, based off of the source document, which is the internal auditor's report that the system works. Fraud, if it is happening, can be found and is reported to the appropriate authorities. The process works, and again, administration are identifying those concerns that were addressed in that source document. And then also, if you go to our website, we have the 6-month expenditure transparency report that is there. We have our yearly CAFR report that is on the website that goes back to actually 2009. And so everything is out there, it's transparent. So we are open. And so I just want to say that each year the auditor does present the audit plan to this board. Mm-hmm. This is the plan that's completed at the time. And then based off of the audit assessment, that's when he makes the audit plan. Mm-hmm. And that we have to remember that this is a large organization. If there are any bad actors out there, they will do what they are going to do. So we have to be mindful of that, and that overall, we try to control the opportunities to prevent improprieties going forward. And so the system is working well enough to allow the operation of the organization, but rigid enough to catch those persons who are trying to provide improprieties. And so when an error is found, we provide training. And that's what staff is doing now, is providing training to those persons and or departments. And we have a number of people who had those pcards for several years and have not had any improprieties. And so we applaud them and thank them for what they've done. And so we want to continue that. Again, we look at the audit and we provide training on any module that is needed. Again, not just pcards, but anything in the district where we need additional training. We will provide that based off of what is needed at the time. Again, we look into the matter to take appropriate measures to reduce the likelihood of reoccurrences. We know that things are going to happen. We know that you may forget something. But again, we need to, and we take this seriously. We take all these reports seriously from our internal auditor, from our superintendent, and as a governing body, we ensure that we have the oversight to ensure that these occurrences don't happen again. So again, those reports are on our website as appropriate, as mandated by law, as it pertains to the transparency report, as it pertains to the CAFR. So the information is there. I encourage you to go take a look at it. If there's any questions, you can always email the superintendent or appropriate staff to get a response. Because some of those things I don't understand. I know some people have been questioning about the Amazon and why we buy from Amazon or buying from certain places. I don't know the answer, but if you get with staff, with Dr. Witherspoon or appropriate staff, I'm sure they can get us a reasonable response as to why those things are done. So again, if things happen, errors happen, we need to train our folk to ensure that they have the proper information, and that our job is to make sure this does not have a reoccurrence in the future. With that, Madam Chair, I yield my time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Commissioner Devine, and I appreciate you talking about the audit plan because I think that's important as well. That you know that this district has a yearly audit plan. So there are various areas that are audited on a regular basis in this district to ensure that we don't have internal issues. And I'm appreciative that when we do our external audit, 33 years, Ms. Matthew Hazel, is that correct? 33 years of clean audits, which says something is happening right. And I know for a fact that these internal processes and procedures are working. And if, as Mr. Devine said, if there's an impropriety or something, it's going to catch it. And that's why I'm appreciative of the checks and balances. And to your point, Commissioner Devine, you mentioned about the training. I was really glad to see that was even one of the recommendations from the auditor was to do a retraining. And to hear our CFO say we're already doing that, it's already in place. So our checks and balances are working. And they will continue to work. And guess what? The auditor will continue to audit because that's his job, that's his role, and that's his responsibility for us, is to be the person on the inside looking into things and making sure we're doing our job at the highest level, that there aren't any issues going forward. Just wanted to speak to that because it was asked of me to speak to it. I appreciate those that reached out to me. I appreciate the sentiments that were shared on behalf of the board in the work that is going forth and so forth. But I appreciate those that was transparent and honest and open to ask, as I heard someone say, the tough questions. There's nothing wrong with tough questions. The only time there's a problem is when truth is not being told. We can have hard decisions and discussions. I welcome that. I didn't have a debate team when I was at Lower Richmond. God knows I wish I had one. I might have been a lawyer or something. But at the end of the day, we have got to always remember something. We're not a dysfunctional board and we're not a dysfunctional district. Let's put the paintbrush down. Stop painting a picture that's telling a story that's not true. I have nothing but love and respect for every one of my colleagues and the superintendent and everybody that works in this district. I don't take none of their roles lightly. Being a board commissioner is not easy. You may think it is. It's not. But at the end of the day, we are the final authority. We are the governing body. And we have a responsibility to the people. And that number one responsibility, guys, is to tell them the truth. We owe it to our constituents to tell them the truth. Because when you don't tell them the truth, you create a false narrative. When you create false narratives, you create distrust amongst not just ourselves, but even other people, the community. I got asked some tough questions. It hurt me to my heart for someone to say to me, "You think it's because the bulk of y'all are black?" That hurt me to my heart. Because I know my colleagues. But my response to them was this: I don't have an answer for you. You'd have to ask whoever it is you need to ask that. I don't know. But whoever is driving the bus of deception, dishonesty, turn the bus off, get off the bus. Because the community is not crazy. They are not. As a matter of fact, they're a little more hip than I gave them credit for. Let's be fair. Fair to each other. Fair to this district. Most important is fair to the children. On a point of personal privilege, I want to recognize a young man that